Mrs. Lois Rudin. She is going to tell us a little bit about the history of the building and show us some pictures of how it changed over the time. Okay?
This should be interesting.
Are you recording now?
This is only, do I have it on?
Done, yeah.
Yeah. This is only supposed to be a brief history, right? Pastor asked me, Lois, how much time do you need? And I said, well, maybe 10, 15 minutes. He said, you have to cut it down. I said, what do you mean cut it down? It's going to take, it took them a lot to do this history, and I cut it down? All right, we'll see what we can do. I have many things to say.
We're with you all the way, Lois. That's a lot of notes.
Yes.
A lot of history.
I learned from the master. Remember, Pastor,
Where's that second read? The boss.
the boss. I am the boss.
Believe me, we know.
Huh? You have to remember that. I am the boss. All right, here we go. Luann? Okay. If you notice, the picture on the screen that you see right now is actually this church. This church, although it was founded in 1923, the day 100 years ago, the church actually was finally built in 1928. That brown church, when I came here in 1960, looked like that. That's what we go into every day. Most of you have no idea what that church looked like. I remember it. I was now 13 years old when my father came here to become the pastor. There's the church. Watch what happens when it changes, and it changed in 1 year. Right, Michael? 1 year it took them. Instead of tearing the whole church down, they took what we had in the church and they rebuilt it inside and out. All right, let's fast forward to 1963. And as you see there is the front of the church. One of the things they did was to take off the whole front of the church. And in that part of the front of the church, they put the concrete staircase. All right, they have a form. If you go underneath the church, in the back here, you can actually see where the steps were put in. And they poured concrete on it and stone. And eventually added the portico. And the narthex is actually the same narthex, but made a little larger. All right? To do the renovation for this church, they had to go to the basement, and they completely redid the basement of the church. The church is much higher. If you took off the pieces of the ceiling down here, you'd see how much higher the church actually is. That's the old church underneath all of this. So, what they did is they started making the basement. They started creating the basement so that we could actually have services there. And one of the things they did is they took the church. There you see on the screen is the altar. That altar was made, hand carved, by the person who was the construction leader, George Small. The altar is the same one that we have over here. And we took that altar and brought it downstairs and actually used that altar for worship while we were continuing to work on the church itself. All right, we worked in the stages of the church. You can go on. That's the church as it was. I think there's one more picture. And this one is very interesting because over on the left side, we had the organ and the pipes. In the middle was the altar. And on the right-hand side was the sacristy. You went in one door and out the other. And that's as big as the room was. So there was no room in that sacristy. They knew they had to make it bigger. They increased the size of the church. All right? They completely gutted the entire sanctuary of the church. The whole thing they took apart while the church was going on downstairs during the year. And they enlarged it. The sides of the church are actually the only thing that is left of the original church on the sides. But they had to take off the walls and put new wallboard on there because you could put your finger through what they did have. They put the new wallboard on. They added, if you look at the windows on either side of the church, some of the windows are different. And they don't look the same. Some were bought for during this construction. Others were from the back of the church and the original narthex and moved around. So they moved around a number of the windows. And they added a lot of decorative molding all along the sides of the church and on the top. And when they did that, they wanted to make it look like a more Williamsburg-like church of the time. So that's the sides of the church. And they put a Ken tile floor over the wooden floor at the time. You see the flooring there. And if you look in the back, over the archway, there's a cubby up there on both sides. That's where we now have our pipes that we have for our organ. And they did not intend to put the pipes there at first. That came later. But what they did is they used that for storage. Now, as they continued on upstairs, you can see how they created the archway. Now, much larger. I'm watching you. I'm watching the two of you. Just wait. They put the archway in, and you'll see the Gethsemane window now is replaced in the back. They pushed it farther back, gave the church a much longer and larger look. In the meantime, while all of this was going on, the back of the church had a foundation poured. And it was much deeper than you would imagine. It fit what we have here in our church. So right down here, all of this was brand new. From the back of the church, we added on the basement. We put in a bathrooms. They had a kitchen there. We took the kitchen out and we moved it around the side. All right, and then we had what else? We put in a boiler room and just the staircases on either side. Then we put on the next floor. That's the first floor where we have the library. We put on the library and other parts of the church, such as the sacristy was put in, and over the sacristy, next to the sacristy was the altar guild room. All of those were put in. You can keep going. And then the top floor was the choir room. At first they were using the choir room as an office because they didn't have an office. We didn't have the house across the street yet. This room was not here. This building was not here until Pastor Hansen came. But my dad had as you see the construction there, that's what they did to add on more room to the church. What they also did is they had all the walls with a little touch of blue. If you look at the walls, there's a little touch of blue in the ceiling, and there's more blue on the walls, and then they had the red carpet, which it enticed people to come into the church. We have all new furniture was put in. mahogany and white furniture to give the look. And then besides that, all of these things were purchased and put in a book. Almost everything was brand new in the church. And they did that, they broke ground in the spring, and it was finished by December 22nd, 1963. And guess how much it cost? It cost $115,000.
Wow.
People gave, if you look at the book, people gave for windows, for pews, everything was donated and given to the church. And the construction was the only thing they had to cost, and it was like 40 cents or something like that. I read once about 40 cents for a worker who was skilled, and a non-worker was 20 cents. So that was in 1963. That's what you can do with the kind of workers we had. Now, basically, that was the end of what I wanted to tell you. However, it appeared to me that I have so much more time left. And since you can look up all the information yourself, and by the way, if somebody doesn't have the book that we had from the 75th, we have some books up here. You can take one and keep it. If you didn't get one at the time, 25 years ago, you never got one. It's filled with lots of information, more information than I could tell you. And I know that we want to move on. Well, it just so happens, about 2 nights ago, I suddenly got this voice at night. Lois, it's me, God. God? What's the problem? I have a lot to tell you. You have to watch out for the Middlestats. I said, what do you mean I have to watch out for the Middlestats? Well, it seems that they're conspiring. I heard from a little birdie that they're conspiring about you and a few other people within this church, just to let you know. Okay, I'll think about it, okay, and I'll watch out. Then I remembered, Neil's got a birthday coming up, maybe in May again? It's always that May time.
Always in May, actually.
Yeah, always in May. But I was trying to figure it out. Was he turning 70? Oh, no, he's not turning 70, because if you turn 70, you're in the age of enlightenment. And we have a whole bunch of people here who are now age of enlightenment in this church. And obviously our pastor's not at that point. So let's continue on. It just so happens I met Pastor when he came here as the mission executive for the Atlantic District. And I think it was 2007?
Yeah, it could be right.
And Linda was giving a talk. Linda Unger was giving a mission talk. We had some things here at the church. So after he spoke, he found out that I was the pastor's daughter. He came up to me and he said, "Hey, I heard that your father's was once the pastor here." I said, "Yes." And he goes, "Well, how did he manage to retire on a pastor's salary?" I said, "Simple. He invested in a summer place way out in the end of the island." "Oh, huh. Really? He invested in a house? Huh." He said, "Thank you. That's good information." Fast forward. We found that he had his name on the list a couple years later, because we were trying and trying for pastors. We had ups and downs with pastors after Pastor Hansen left. And it just so happens that Neil found himself on the list in 2010. I go, oh gee, I think I remember that man. Okay. It just so happens he came, we had a talk with him, and he had a crew cut. And I thought to myself, gee, he looks younger than he probably is. It just so happens that we spent some time with him, and we really liked him, but I thought to myself, I think there's something about him. I heard something, and I said to the committee, I said, let's go for a ride. It was late in the evening, he was the only one left, and we had a couple of people in from this group here. We took him for a ride, and we took him all the way down to the beach.
Long Beach.
Long Beach. And we were in the parking lot, it was kind of dark out, and it just so happens, I had heard from another little birdie that somebody liked to go sailing. So I said, let's take him down there. So he gets out of the car, he looks around, and he goes, what's that over there? I said, those are boats, bobbing in the water. It's hard to see in the dark, but they're there. And I said, well, let's go up this walkway. And we went up a walkway, went over to the dunes. And on the other side of the dunes, he said, what's that? I said, that's Long Island Sound. Really? Again, huh? Really? That's Long Island Sound? Yes, and Connecticut's on the other side. Haven't you ever looked at a map? Oh, a map. Oh. Yes, we're on Long Island. We're an island. And there's water on our north side, and our south side, and east and west. You can't get off the island without going across the water. Huh. That's right. Huh. Okay. So I said, we got back in the car, and we went back to the church, and he took off, and he left. That night, I heard from another little birdie that he actually went online, and he picked up that sailboat that you see in the driveway. He purchased it without knowing that he was going to be accepted or not to become our pastor. Found out that he was going to become a pastor. He said, great, I got the sailboat. So it just so happens that when he came here, he said, I've got my boat, I got a place for it, I'm taking Mondays off. Mondays is his day for sailing. So we listened to him and we said, gee, something's a little off on him. And I said, you know what? I think maybe it's because he's Canadian. He's Canadian? Where did you pick him up from? I said, well, the district already had him as a mission director, so I guess he's okay. And what about his wife? Oh, she's English. English? Oh my goodness, what a combination, Canadian and English. All right, but I hear that she's the boss. She's the boss she's the organizer, she's the boss. So that's how we got started. And then as things went on, we found that he had a few habits.
What?
Obviously, the first one everybody knows. It's his sermons. Oh, you hear it. I know. You're all thinking, oh, it's okay now. We've gotten used to his hour and a half long sermons, or whatever the time goes. Everybody tried, but nothing could change him.
That's true.
All right. Then you find out about the walks. He walks around the neighborhood. All right. Now, what you don't know is he often stops here at the refrigerator, or the refrigerator that's in his garage, and he has all kinds of food. You name the party that we had, it's there. The cafe, Dorina says, where did the box of donuts go? Ah, we know where they went. And so we looked at a lot of things and we realized that he has another little problem. He complains about things. He whines about things. And I don't mean drinking the wine. He does that too. But whining, when we bought the house over here, we bought the house and there were a couple little problems we had. He was saying, oh, that's too much. We really can't have this house here. It's too much for us to have. I said, Pastor, it's fine. We have the money. Right, Ken? Yes, we have the money. It was great. And now he realizes I'm the boss and I know what I'm talking about. So it just so happens we got to the warmer weather and we decided I decided that we needed to cut down some trees so we could actually see what the house looked like. Because most people said, what house? I never saw that house. Never saw the house before. So we were out there, we had to cut down several trees. And the men are all there ready to cut down. And Pastor says, I see you're going to cut down the trees. Which trees are you going to cut down? You're only cutting one or two, right? He said, no, they're all going. No. Whine and whine and whine and whine. You can't take that tree down. We need it. We don't need it for anything. It's hollow inside. Finally, he consented. He could take some of the trees down. The big contention was the one in the front of the house. As people know, there was a tree that looked like it belonged in Radio City Music Hall for the Christmas tree. The problem was the acorns were dropping, the pine cones were all over the ground and constantly dropping and so forth. So I said, who's going to clean them up? Nobody around.
Here's going to clean them up. So, maybe I talked too much.
I think, Lois, the first 5 minutes, I gave you 5 minutes. I think we run out of battery.
That's okay. One more thing to tell you. And it just so happened last night, God said to me, he said, no, Lois, just remind Pastor. Just remind him. Remember, you're the boss and the budget is coming. That's it.
Thank you, Lois.